Hello, this is Neil O'Brien. I've re-recorded this lecture, which is lecture number 23, the final lecture in the CT1100 computer systems series. And the reason I've re-recorded it is because the live version of it, there was a bit of a feedback loop for some of it. Thanks to the participants, I managed to stop that halfway through, but it was a little bit disjointed, so I decided to re-record this for posterity's sake. So if any of you want to look back on it, this is the one where I'm wearing the headphones. So this is a second video, and hopefully we'll cover everything in strictly the correct order this time. So I'm going to get going now, and basically these are the slides. So just to let you know that this lecture is about telecoms in Ireland. It's the final lecture in the semester 2 lecture series. We've already covered pretty much everything in semester 1 and semester 2. We have one more MCQ test to go on this Wednesday, and that will be looking at this lecture and the 4 previous lectures. So that'll be lectures 19, 20, 21, 22, and this one, which is 23. So it's a half-hour multiple choice question test on Wednesday, and it starts at 12 o'clock, and I'm giving the extended time until 5 o'clock to complete that. It should be fairly straightforward if you've looked back over the lecture notes. So just today's lecture, some feedback on CT1100. I'm going to give that to you in a minute. A little bit about information technology for second and third year BA, and then lecture material on telecoms in Ireland. So the data is coming from official government publications, and this needs some reflection and interpretation to appreciate fully the figures. Okay, so quickly some reflection on CT1100. It's been a great experience. Semester 2 has been a great experience for me. There's been lectures from lecture number 12 in the total series to lecture number 23 today, and we have had 3 assignments which most of you have handed up. There's still an opportunity before the end of this week to complete those assignments if you haven't done it, or indeed to resubmit them. I'll be contacting you privately if there is any deficit in that regard. Anyway, I hope that you have learned a lot of HTML, JavaScript and CSS during this course. It's going to be good for the future years, and it'll be good for future opportunities in terms of employment. So thank you very much for that. So just in terms of second year, the second year of the program, it's worth 30 ECT credits, and it's divided into 6 modules. So in semester 1 in year 2, there's object-oriented programming 1, there's information systems 1, which is to do with databases, and then there's systems analysis and design, which I think is absolutely excellent and very interesting. Object-oriented programming 2 will take place in semester 2. We'll be looking at you'll be looking at web information systems and web application development as well. Okay, so hopefully this year's studies have helped in that regard. So it should put you in a good position to in terms of web application development. So third year, it starts getting very exciting. You build on the first and second year work and focus on specific areas of IT which you may find interesting. So you'll develop your programming skills, and there'll be extensive research in the area of IT of your choice, and it'll be presented in a conference setting. So you'll develop a computer application or systems in a group project, and group projects are really the way that the IT world works. So it's very well worth doing. And you will have a choice of further modules, and you can choose those. So today's lecture is all about telecommunications in Ireland, and they fall under the Department of Communications, Climate Action and Environment, which is known as the Department of Decay in government circles, which is a very inappropriately named department, but nevertheless that's what it's known as, DCCAE. And the communications regulator is Comreg. They've been around for quite a while, and they still remain known as Comreg, so that's quite a straightforward one. So they produce a quarterly report. and that's a link to the latest one in Q4 2019. And then the DESI report, DESI, that's the Digital Economy and Society Index from 2017. We'll have a look at that. So just to say that development was slow in terms of takeoff in the 1980s. So there was a waiting list from 1940, and it had increased to 100,000 in the 80s. But by the mid-60s, the Posts and Telegraphs organisation in Ireland tried to dampen down demand. So, and that market was actually deregulated finally. It wasn't just one supplier anymore, and that was deregulated as short a time ago as 1998. But all fixed line customers are now served by digital lines and touch tone signalling. In terms of subscriptions, you can see that nowadays mobile subscriptions, there's over 6.5 million mobile subscribers in Ireland, which is extraordinary, seeing as there's only about 5 million of us. There's 2.2 million landlines also. So that number is pretty steady. It's been slightly decreasing in recent times, but the mobile numbers have increased quite consistently. And obviously people have more than one mobile in many cases, and there's different types of mobile connectivity as well. So nowadays when people talk to each other, the vast bulk of them, as you see from this blue segment here on the various the various quarters information, quarterly feedback, it's mobile to mobile, so mobile talking to mobile. Fixed to fixed is actually been dramatically decreasing over the years, and even since 2017 it's decreased significantly. Go back a slide there. The industry retail revenues, again the mobile retail revenues are the biggest. The fixed line rental is pretty steady. It's not increased dramatically through the various different quarters. It's pretty fixed, lives up to its name. And then there's some revenue from broadcasting retail as well. So those are the figures, and the two ones that I did draw your attention to is the 20% roughly decrease on an annual basis in fixed voice traffic. So that is moving in a downward direction, there's no doubt about it. Voice traffic from fixed lines is decreasing. Not surprisingly, mobile subscriptions are up, as we said, and indeed machine-to-machine subscriptions are substantially up. So the total mobile subscriptions has actually increased by nearly 6% on an annual basis. Okay, next slide. Okay, so fixed line market share, not surprisingly, Eircom, BT, Virgin Media, Vodafone and Sky would be the main suppliers, and obviously Eircom traditionally for fixed lines has been the strongest player. That's largely historical. In terms of mobiles, we see that the two biggest players are Vodafone and the Three Group has increased substantially. Now Air has a 17% market share in that area, and Tesco is coming up the inside now with 6.3% of market share. So the biggest and most interesting increase in anything to do with communications is this one, and that's the purple line is actually data volumes have increased enormously. So as we see SMS messages going down from 1.49 billion in the first quarter of 2016, they've now gone down as far as 864 million messages in the quarter. The quarter just finished in December 2019. So we're seeing a corresponding reduction in things like text messages or indeed MMS messages, and indeed we're seeing a fall off in voice discussions. But that's not actually entirely true, because voice discussions are increasing enormously using various apps in which are shown by this increase in data volumes. So there's basically we're developing different ways of communicating all the time. So mobile voice call minutes are fairly steady, but they're decreasing slightly, and that's not because people aren't using their mobiles, it's because they're using them differently. but this is the revenue directly in terms of the traditional methods of using phones. Now we can see this dramatically by this particular graph, which is showing that the SMS messages are going down quite significantly, while the usage of data is going up. And those two correspond to each other because people are switching from one type of messaging to another type of messaging. Luckily for most people, this type of messaging is actually usually free, assuming that you have a proper data subscription on your mobile package, for example. Okay, onto the DESI report, or Digital Economy and Society Index. Ireland ranked 8th in the European Union out of 28 countries when this report was compiled, DESI 2017. So it covers a whole load of different things, but connectivity is a key one. Now, we were above the EU average at this stage, and we still are, but not by a huge amount, although that will improve when the National Broadband Plan is properly implemented. In terms of human capital, we're pretty good in general. You know, there's two sort of interesting figures in that sort of basic digital skills were actually quite lowly ranked, but in terms of graduates, we're ranked number 1, graduates in science, technology, engineering and mathematics. So, you know, we're rapidly coming up in terms of our digital skills in Ireland. And usage of the internet, you wouldn't be surprised to know we're roughly in line with the European Union average. There's some countries which are sort of better in terms of online banking, online shopping and so on. We're roughly in the middle. Music videos and games, other countries rank way ahead of us. And in terms of news, we're actually quite lowly ranked, or we were when this report was taken. So in terms of integration of digital technology, Irish SMEs are actually very high up on the list. We do pretty well. Our small and medium enterprises, our companies actually do very well in terms of cross-border trading, e-commerce turnover, and selling online. So we can be very proud of that fact. And in terms of social media, we're actually quite high up the list as well. In terms of digital public services, we're sort of in the middle, but are in the open data area. That's an area that I've been very much involved with. We're ranked number 3, and indeed in recent times we've been ranked as high as number 1. So again, our open data usage in the public service has actually been quite successful. We've done many presentations abroad in terms of how we've been doing that. We've caught up with the UK in that regard, and the UK was number 1, but now unfortunately they're not even in the EU. In terms of total broadband subscriptions, onto broadband, that's been steadily increasing, and the National Broadband Plan, as we'll see towards the end of this lecture, will show that in fact you know, that's going to continue to improve. And it's particularly poignant in terms of times like the moment where we're actually you know, using a lot of online technology to try and do things like lectures. We're trying to survive through this COVID-19 crisis by I suppose doing a lot of things online and staying at home, working from home where possible. But hopefully soon we'll get back to more normal times, and the reality is that working from home is actually probably here to stay. And what this particular time has shown us a value of it we didn't even expect, but it is going to be more and more the case in the future, most likely, because expensive office space and commuting large distances doesn't make a huge amount of sense when it's quite legitimate to spend a lot of time working from home. So changing patterns are being reflected by increase of broadband. Okay, some figures for television. Television, things like what I call this, Netflix, obviously are increasing very considerably. IP television, which is internet-based television. We'll see other figures. Irish terrestrial television is still increasing, but it's very much at a low level. So cable and satellite, believe it or not, is decreasing at the moment. but the big growth area is in terms of internet television, so things like, as I said, Netflix. Now back to broadband. On an EU-wide basis, we're not doing too bad. We're slightly, at the moment, these are very recent figures, 2019, we're slightly above the EU average, but we'd like to increase that, and the National Broadband Plan should do that. It should improve us, because Ireland is very much a technological country. We have many of the top European internet companies are actually based here in Ireland. The tech companies, we're a tech hub really in terms of Europe, and we very much need to make sure that we're, our country, everybody's wired in or indeed connected by mobile broadband. So in terms of the national broadband map, this is available online, but you can basically see that areas like Dublin and the big cities like Galway are very much covered by broadband. You can see the cities actually in terms of blue dots. So you see Cork and Limerick areas, are very much covered. And you see the coastal areas quite often because there's a lot of housing along there, whereas in Galway, large areas of peatland and bogland are not obviously covered very well by broadband, and that's the way it should be. It's where people live and where people work. It's the key thing. So you see the coastal zone here is very well covered by broadband. So the broadband plan itself is to basically provide coverage in 96% of Ireland's landmass, and this will involve laying a lot of fibre still. 146,000 kilometres of fibre will be put in place, and it'll cover and connect 537,000 premises. Now there's already many premises covered by broadband. So finally, this week's lab online, it's the final lab, and what we're doing is the third MCQ test, and as I said previously in the lecture, we'll be covering the last 5 lectures on communications as part of this MCQ test. There'll be 3 attempts at that, and that's really sort of, I suppose, partly to allow people who find it difficult to under the current circumstances to complete this. So you'll also have the opportunity to come in during 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock to discuss with myself, Heike and Ajinka in the Blackboard virtual classroom any aspects of the course that you would like to discuss. And in particular, for those who haven't completed this assignments or feel like resubmitting them before the end, or resubmitting some sections of them, you can still do that up until the end of this week. So I'd be very grateful if you would get those in as soon as you possibly can, if you haven't already done so. So anyway, that's it. Thank you very much indeed for your time and for your patience and for your perseverance. I hope that you're all very much, your computer skills are very much improved, both your background knowledge, but also very much your sort of knowledge and practical knowledge in terms of HTML, CSS and JavaScript in particular. And to those who've already handed in your assignments in full, thank you very much. And the few of you who've still got some assignments to hand in, please get them in urgently. So great pleasure, and without any further ado, I'm going to wish you well, and wish you very well indeed, and stay well during the difficult times at the moment, and hope to see you back in the college as soon as is possible. Thank you very much indeed. Bye now.